Okay. Well, welcome today to Traverse Area District Library's Zoom programming. You can find all of our events at TADL.org. And you can also find what programs have been recorded on our YouTube channel, which is TADL Not Just Books. In this program, we're going to hold the questions until the end and your comments, but you can utilize the chat feature in the Q&A to type in any questions or comments that you have, and then we'll address it at the end. Today's program is about mindfulness-based stress reduction and how this can help you. Wendy Wechstein is a physical therapist and mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher for adults through Brown University. She's also certified in MBSR for teens. Today, she'll talk to us about MBSR and how it can help you reduce stress and offer techniques that will help you increase joy and enthusiasm towards life. So thank you, Wendy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a wonderful platform in order to talk with this group. I cannot see how many of you are here, but welcome to those of you who chose to come and learn a little bit more about mindfulness. I'll be sharing during this presentation a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll be stopping in the middle and doing some experiential practice so that you can feel what I'm talking about. But just want to tell you a little bit more about myself and what I do, and kind of how I landed in this position of working in such depth with mindfulness and with meditation. So Betsy had mentioned that I'm a physical therapist. Have been a physical therapist for over 25 years. And in the field, in any healthcare, but especially what I was noticing as a clinician was that lifestyle, including coping skills, is something that often it's neglected, or physicians or healthcare providers may not have enough time to really put a lot of emphasis on how we're leading our lifestyle, what we're doing during the majority of our day, and how that potentially affects our physical and our mental health and well-being. And it's quite profound how lifestyle, there's a lot of research on that. So over the years, I became more and more interested in that and started creating different wellness programs in some of the different clinics I was working in. Eventually became also a certified wellness consultant to add to my physical therapy degree. And because mindfulness and meditation, which we'll be talking about, has always been a big part of my life, I also have been pursuing over a number of years, it's a long-term process, to become a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, which I am through Brown University's School of Public Health. And all of that together has allowed me now, I'm working in an outpatient neuropsychiatric clinic for children and adolescents with mental health issues, with a psychiatrist and social workers. And my role here in this setting is to integrate lifestyle to help support the mental health objectives of this team and of the family, of the kids. And I also spend quite a lot of time, in addition to one-on-one work, I spend a lot of time teaching mindfulness-based stress reduction classes, both for adults and then a mindfulness-based stress reduction class specifically modified for teens. And you may have heard it around, potentially, it's also called and advertised as stressed teens. So that is really what I spend most of my time now engaged in. And I want to just tell you a little bit more specifically about mindfulness, especially during this period of time where all of us to some degree are feeling the stress, right? And we do anyways in our lives, the typical traditional stresses of just being human. But what we've been facing over the last number of years has been quite a bit more significant in so many ways. And so I think this is a real timely, it's wonderful that now we're starting to see a light with COVID and with vaccinations, and the weather, and actually starting to see the light actually in the day. It's starting to get lighter each day, longer days, and that gives us all this hopeful, fresh feeling. So we're going to add to this talking about mindfulness and what else you can integrate into your life. So I'm going to go ahead and share. It'll just take me a moment to get this onto the slideshow version. Okay, so here we are, and hopefully all of you can hear me okay. If there's any problem with my speaker, you can go ahead and chat, and Betsy can then let me know. And you should be seeing a full screen now of my PowerPoint. So what we're going to be talking about today is basically not only more specifically mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a particular type of program, but also what is mindfulness anyways? And how can that actually help me? Mindfulness right now is a real trendy word. We hear it, all sorts of mindfulness programs out there, which I'm thrilled about. But do we actually know what it means? There's a lot to this word. And so I want to spend some time talking about that with all of you. We'll look forward to hearing some of your questions. So mindfulness in a simplistic way to describe it is basically our ability to rest our attention in what is happening right here and right now in the present moment, instead of where our mind wants to be dragged away, which is typically into our thoughts and our ruminations, our worries or regrets, perhaps, about what happened yesterday. Or maybe we're dragged off and drift off into our heads about expectations or worries or planning or racing ahead to get to tomorrow. And so when we think about the definition of mindfulness and what that is, it's really all about this ability, this choice we have to redirect our attention and rest it in the moment in terms of not only what, our surroundings, which would mean like our five senses, what I'm seeing or smelling or hearing or feeling, but also resting in the moment with our emotions, actually being present to what it is that we're feeling in terms of strong emotions, what we are perhaps ruminating about in our thoughts, and also what's going on in our body. Are there any red flags? Just bringing ourselves back to recognizing what's actually happening right here now with our body. So it's just a general, and this screen looks a little blurry to me, I apologize, but it is a wonderful screen to give you a nice visual of mindfulness. And you can see I have it a little bit different, but very similar to this behind me. Use that in my classes quite a bit. And so I like this visual because what it is showing here, and I'm going to actually see if I can get onto, oh, that's okay. I was going to try to get like a highlighter, but that's all right. So we can see that there are two individuals here. And the person who is spending their time with their bubble full that you can see on my left, this person's mind is full, right? This is where we tend to spend most of our time. Just ruminating. We're wonderful storytellers. This is where we fill our heads with judgments, perhaps, where we become very self-critical. This is where we tend to resist, to worry, to blame. And often when we are in this space, which there have been many studies out there, Harvard in particular has done one, on how much time do we actually spend away from what is actually happening in the moment. And I believe in their first study, they found it was 50 to 55% of our time, so half of our lives are moments that we are missing. But they actually believe it is probably quite a bit more than that in all reality. And so here we are in this space where this is actually the space where we tend to do the most suffering. This is where we fight what's happening and are being judgmental, not only often to ourselves and critical with ourselves, but often towards other people, or towards perhaps a new experience that maybe we have not ever been involved in, but we have already created a story and perhaps thrown in or attached a judgment or a belief. And our emotions become quite strong here. And it's chaotic. And truthfully, it's quite exhausting when we're here, when we are ruminating over and over in our thoughts. The person on the right, or my right, with the bubble that's nice and open, this person is a wonderful representation of being mindful. So this person has made the choice to stop and intentionally guide his attention or direct his attention away from wherever it is traveling and to deliberately rest his attention on what he is smelling or seeing or feeling. So he's actually walking through this field and noticing perhaps his feet crunching on the leaves or the smell of the soil, perhaps feeling the warmth of the sun on his face or seeing the beautiful colors of a bird or flowers. When we allow ourselves and give ourselves this permission to really to take a break from our ruminations and where we are traveling off to and drifting off to, this is actually where peacefulness lives. This is where we are able to let go, where we are in the moment. And because actually it's very hard to do both at the same time. We try to multitask, but when we are ruminating and thinking about the past or the future, we are absolutely not fully in the moment. So this is about fully being in the moment and doing so as best as possible, leaving behind judgment, leaving behind wanting to fix anything or change anything or wish things to be a certain way. To simply rest in that moment as if you have a beginner's mind, which you can also think about a childlike mind with curiosity and interest and inquisitiveness. And in this way, this allows us and gives us this opportunity to bring in appreciation and gratitude, to actually be able to see what's really here to be known. And so, this is different than wrapping layer after layer of emotions and thoughts to our experience. This is where we find calmness and peacefulness, fresh perspectives. So you can see that this person on the right has literally more clarity of mind here, able to see what's happening with possibly from multiple perspectives, fresh perspectives. And in that way has this ability to respond calmly to whatever it may be that is happening in that experience. Whereas the person with all sorts of things going on in his mind, this is where reactivity lives. This is where we tend to experience these habitual patterns of thinking and behaving and reacting. They're automatic and they're quick. And so just taking a peek at that, and even though I described it in detail, it's really rather a simple concept, but actually very difficult to do. As human beings, it's human nature for us to want to drift away, get dragged down one rabbit hole after another. So mindfulness is actually, it's a practice. It takes time for us to cultivate this awareness and to strengthen our attention. And as we do this, we start to discover that we actually have these inner resources and these inner capabilities, that we are actually whole and complete just the way we are. It's just that many of these resources are untapped. And so we're learning to discover and utilize some of these resources to help us with stress management, help us to better find emotional regulation, and this ability to live each day with a greater sense of inner peace and well-being and happiness. It's really about cultivating our ability to more skillfully navigate through all of life's challenges, pleasant, unpleasant, or challenging moments with more ease and more contentment. It also is helping us to become more resilient and providing us with a number of tools, again, that are already within us, just need to be discovered and cultivated. And so we become more resilient. We're able to bounce back much more quickly or adapt from physical or emotional stressors in our life, which are inevitable, our challenges. Resiliency is this ability to meet these challenges with more ease and more contentment. And mindfulness is a form of self-care, and a very important form of self-care, right along with other healthy lifestyle practices. It really is one of the keys to sustainable emotional and physical well-being. So in addition to looking at how much physical activity are we getting, how much aerobic exercise, are we eating well-balanced meals and not junk food or fast foods all the time? Are we getting enough sleep? How much technology are we engaged in? Are we being thoughtful with our use of technology? And then adding to this formula, this very important ingredient of bringing in mindfulness, this choice to be able to turn our attention away from these false narratives and ruminations and bring us into that state of peacefulness, to rest with what is, to see things more clearly. And so that's a general definition of mindfulness. I want to present to you a little more specifically about a particular way of teaching mindfulness called Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction. I'm not sure if any of you have heard about this program. It's also referred to as MBSR. And it was created, the founder of this program was a doctor by the name of Jon Kabbat-Zinn. And this was a program that he developed in the late 90s at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. He's also the founder of the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine and Healthcare. And so Jon Kabbat-Zinn wanted to create a program to offer mindfulness to more people in Western society, so that it's more comfortable for anyone to want to experience and to gain the benefits. He was working at this medical center, seeing a lot of suffering going on. And at the same time, he himself is still practicing for many, many years Buddhism. And so knew for himself the incredible benefits of mind and body from this practice, and came to an awareness that this was extremely important to be able to bring to more people. And so that was his goal, and created by 1979 this extremely structured and systematic approach to bringing awareness, attention, and mindfulness into our lives. And doing so it has more of a universal applicability to reduce suffering. So this course that he created is an 8-week class, along with a full mindfulness retreat, which is actually a full day of silence. And it is highly evidence-based. There has been over 40 years of research and neuroscience that has been done specifically on MBSR, as well as thousands of studies on mindfulness in general. But this particular program offers this intensive mindfulness training, helping people with a host of stress-related physical, emotional, psychological conditions. And so it is a group process, group-based. It's highly interactive. The centerpiece is mindful meditation and yoga, mindful movement practice, along with a large psychoeducational component. And it's really this melding. So Jon Kabbat-Zinn, being a scientist and working with science and medicine, as well as psychology, and melding this together with these Far Eastern practices of Buddhist meditative teachings. Again, it's been highly researched and has come to be very well respected within the medical community all around the world well over 200 medical centers, hospitals, clinics worldwide. And because of all of this research, it really exploded in the early 80s. It was because of Jon Kabbat-Zinn and his creation of this MBSR program that mindfulness really took off in Western society. And now it is branched out in so many different ways, all wonderful. And so now you'll find it in school systems. Maybe some of you are aware of that. You'll see that kids are being taught with mindfulness practices. It's being held in prison settings, corporate settings, definitely for the general public. And so if you're curious about where some of the research on his specific program, there has been a lot of research right where he founded this at the University of Massachusetts at their medical school. Brown University, which is where most of my training has come from, and where all of Jon Kabbat-Zinn's proteges that became instructors underneath him have kind of shifted the program over to Brown University, and a lot of research is being done there. University of Wisconsin Center for Healthy Minds is doing some pretty incredible work looking at structural and functional changes actually that are going on in the brain through functional imaging, and doing this with senior monks as well as with participants who have been involved in this 8-week program. And some really interesting, profound things have been found, which we'll talk about as we move forward in this presentation. UCLA, there's a gentleman, Dan Siegel, written many books on this and a lot of research out of there. Harvard, many, many more, and all around the world. And so these benefits that they are researching, and I should have actually added the word potential benefits. There's a lot possible when you engage in the regular practice and bring mindfulness into your life and meditation. But of course, not guaranteed. But the researched possible benefits that they have been finding pretty regularly across the board in a lot of the research is not only this ability to regulate your own emotions instead of feeling like your emotions control you. So when I talk about emotional regulation, it's really about knowing that your hands are on the wheel, that you're driving this bus, that your emotions are not the ones that are controlling you, and that although we spend much of our day on autopilot, we have this choice to change course. And this is what offers us this ability to enter into more wise emotional regulation. We talked about resiliency. Also, self-esteem is a really big one, because a lot of what we are doing when we are in the bubble, when we are dragged away into our thoughts, pulled away, is we are being highly self-critical. And I'm sure most of you are aware of that. This is part of our human condition that we share. We are harsher with ourselves than we would be with our worst enemies sometimes, things that we say to ourselves. And so this awareness, this intentionally paying attention to these perhaps familiar patterns of thinking, of self-criticism, or perhaps maybe these familiar ways that we react when we are self-deprecating ourselves. And so by bringing awareness to this, we then can choose perhaps how we want to perceive, how we may possibly shift our attitude or respond to that, and potentially how we can integrate mindfulness practices to help us with that. There's been a lot of studies on focus and attention. And as you can imagine, if this is a practice where we are working towards attending to what is here and now, there's this possibility then of strengthening these neural pathways, these parts of our brain that allow us to pay attention. So with ADHD, anxiety, panic attacks, PTSD, depression, stress management, all of these mental health issues. There's been a lot of research and profound, actually quite profound benefits from mindfulness in general and specifically from mindfulness-based stress reduction. Done a lot of research on sleep, not only the ability to fall asleep, but to stay asleep, pain management, and then a number of different illnesses in terms of either reversal of disease, prevention of disease, or management of disease symptoms, as well as helping one deal with more chronic medical conditions and to find more peace and comfort in and in some ways helping to prevent some of those secondary complications that can arise with a chronic medical condition. A lot on asthma, cardiovascular disease, migraine, skin disorder. So it's really, really fascinating stuff. The science behind this is based on neuroplasticity, which simply means that when we engage in repetitive lifestyle behaviors over and over again, we have an actual ability to impact what's going on in our brain, the growth of our neurons and our neuronal pathways. We have this ability to lay down new neuronal pathways, to repair neuronal pathways, either in a positive way or a negative way. So you can picture that if we are engaging in repetitive lifestyle behaviors of perhaps self-criticism or catastrophizing, or maybe even sedentary behavior, or of habitual patterns of how we react, and we do this over and over and over again. What we're doing is we're carving those out. We're strengthening potentially negative neural pathways, making it really easy to hop on board sort of these speed highways directly to a behavior in our brain. But in the same way with mindfulness, as we cultivate this ability to bring clarity and peacefulness and fresh perspectives from resting our attention in what's here and now, we have that same ability to see positive changes, positive neuroplasticity. And University of Wisconsin in Madison, they are doing a lot of studies that I mentioned on this with these senior monks, with 8-week members of this class, and doing these MRIs and seeing actual brain growth, which is extremely exciting. So we're seeing brain growth, and I won't go through all these areas of the brain, but basically what they have found in a number of different places and universities that are studying this is that the areas that they find are growing are the areas of our brain that are dealing with empathy, social connectivity. Let's see, I have sensory input, self-relevance, just bringing this awareness to yourself, cognition and memory, this emotional regulation, compassion, and perspective taking. What's very interesting as well, what they're finding is that this part of our brain that's deep down in our brain called our amygdala, which is basically our alarm center, which is where stress is being perceived and where our reactivity it's the beginning of this reactivity from stress. And they've noticed that these senior meditators, that their amygdala is so small compared to the rest of us. And comparing people before and after engaging in regular practice, noticing that down regulation. So this is powerful, real, evidence-based, scientific stuff from simply paying attention, allowing yourself to actually actively engage in whatever it is that you may be experiencing, to live your lives more richly, more fully. And all of this is possible. So with mindfulness, we see all of this as a possibility, this possibility of becoming more compassionate and kind with more empathy, as we're able to clear away, sort of push our way through this entangled web of emotions and thoughts. And we enter into clarity as we allow ourselves to rest in the present moment. And when we can start to see things as they really are, we start to, develop fresh perspectives and see that there may be multiple perspectives to any situation we're in. Perhaps we're able to infuse kindness or compassion for ourselves, perhaps towards another person that maybe we've been so angry we've wanted to wring their neck, to be able to actually see this from a different perspective. And so we start to strengthen these areas of our brain for empathy, helping us to start seeing the positive, noticing positive moments, and stop ruminating on these negative moments and negative thoughts. The reduction of stress and anxiety, impulse control, which is basically our reactivity, doing something automatically, habitually, quickly. So this ability for us to stop and pause and create space in order for us to bring in awareness to whatever it is that may be happening in the moment. Right there, over and over with repetition, we develop this skill for impulse control. And so we're seeing more joy and contentment. I've mentioned a number of times emotional regulation, building optimism, gaining confidence, and strengthening focus and attention, just to name a few. But here we are, and perhaps maybe this is where I should have started this entire talk. This is what we're dealing with. And so everything I'm saying may sound so beautiful, and maybe those words sound easy, but we all know that this is not easy. Whether it, as I mentioned, is these more modern or current stressors that we're dealing with, or whether it is the traditional stressors of perhaps relationships or finances or work or health, whatever that may be, which are enough in and of themselves. But we're dealing with this, global pandemic. We're dealing with living in an age of technology where we are trying to juggle and multitask our lives along with numerous devices. And as we do this, we have forgotten how to take even a split second of sitting in stillness, because anytime we have even a split second, we are drawn towards technology to fill that gap, to quickly look at our phone and check our text, check the weather, whatever it might be, get onto a social media. And so technology has offered all sorts of additional stressors, and a lot of science and research on technology, on enhancing mental health, illness, and physical disease as well. We're dealing with this polarized world right now. So whatever side you're on, there is stress coming from either side politically, whether that relates to climate. And so just a lot going on. But are we able, in the midst of this, do these potentially offer us these opportunities to stop and pause and discover what we are capable of, what powerful resources we have within us to be able to smoothly navigate through these stressors? It's not that these stressors won't happen. These challenges are inevitable in our lives every day, every week, every year. But we either can resist them, fight against them, not want them, and then perhaps we spiral. Our mental health and our physical health and well-being begin to spiral. With mindfulness, we have this ability to pause, bring awareness, and make these choices. These thoughtful choices, deliberate choices, so that we develop this resiliency, that we can bounce back, we can make it through these stressors with a little bit more contentment. And you know what? We can also possibly even see beauty and find joy in the midst of some of these great challenges. And so when we look at stress, this affects us in so many different ways. And I know you all know this, but when we really just take a peek at it, and then how each one of these areas of our lives then have an impact on the other. And we end up in this vicious cycle So what's happening physically to us with stress? You may notice your heart racing or breathing heavy, or you get migraines, that you tense up, that you don't have energy or aren't sleeping well. So many things you can think of. Emotionally, obviously, we just ruminate in our emotions. And so this is where depression and anxiety, anger, cognitively, there has been a lot of research also on the impact of stress on our ability to pay attention and to focus, on our memory, on our ability to learn. This can affect us vocationally. This can affect us academically, socially. Often with stress, we engage in these behaviors, perhaps of social isolation. Taking away this joy of being with people, and we would rather be away from people in the middle of stress. And then behaviorally, these are all the behaviors that we engage in when we are in the midst of this reactive state, this automatic, habitual engagement in whatever that behavior may be. Maybe it's going for a box of donuts or slamming a door, or for some people, perhaps it's substance abuse, whatever that may be. And so here we have this vicious cycle. Chronic stress, it definitely results in unhealthy behaviors. And unhealthy behaviors goes right back into this cycle and leads right back to chronic stress. When we're stressed, we often get less sleep. We often find ourselves eating less healthy or restricting or overeating. Sometimes we will binge on technology. There's a sedentary lifestyle that often is part of stress, sometimes with weight gain, obesity, which can lead to disease, social isolation, and often addictions and these self-harming behaviors. And so this then, of course, worsens our mental health, our self-esteem, our depression, our anxiety, which often then takes us right back into more unhealthy lifestyles. We then even get deeper into this cycle, which leads to more stress, more disease, and on and on. Here we are on this hamster wheel of life, or this treadmill that we feel we have no control over. We're helpless, we're stuck, almost as if we're paralyzed in the midst of this, right? And this is common. This is what not just you, but everyone around you experience in some form. And this type of stress, it can have a profound impact on our body and our mind. Lot of possible disease processes, illness, our immune system, as well as mental health. And so I want to take a moment here, because this really helps to pull together how it is that we're going to come right back to mindfulness. So how then, more specifically, can mindfulness have an impact on this? Can mindfulness perhaps offer me some tools so that I can become aware and perhaps make a healthier choice? And so we want to start off by looking at what many of you probably learned back in 9th grade about fight, flight, freeze. This is our stress response. And potentially you saw this the same way I have this cartoon of a caveman being chased by a lion or a tiger. And so fight, flight is a protective response. It's part of our sympathetic nervous system that prepares the body for imminent danger. And it's a key to survival. As I mentioned, this is activated by our sympathetic nervous system, and it was adaptive really back for primitive species. It is part of our primitive brain and is housed mostly in our amygdala. And so I want to show you this because this snake that you're seeing could be a tiger. It could be whatever it is that's leading to that acute stress that is threatening your survival. And so what's happening with fight flight then is that the information then goes to the thalamus, which is right in the center there. And the moment that it is perceived as a threat, instantaneously, the moment it's perceived as a threat, it then will go right down to the amygdala, which is the alarm center. which then activates our hypothalamus, our pituitary gland, and our adrenal gland. Instantaneously, over 30 different hormones are released from our body to help prepare the body to fight off that tiger or to run as fast as we can, or sometimes to freeze and see if we can camouflage. Cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine are some familiar ones that you'd recognize. And so here we are in fight flight, and it has affected the rate of our breathing. Our muscles have tensed up. The blood has rushed to the large muscles of our body, away from some of our internal organs to make sure that our large muscles are prepared. Glucose is released in abundance to give energy. Shakiness, sweatiness, our eyes become more focused in to see the threat. And this again is preparing us to react quickly, instantaneously. But the important thing here, the key here to notice or to learn perhaps today, is that fight flight, in the exact same way with a tiger or a rattlesnake, is also triggered by strong emotions in the exact same physiological or neurophysiological way. So instead of this snake, I went ahead and put a gentleman who looks like he's being a little self-critical. He's judging himself. So this emotion doesn't matter that it is an emotion. It is perceived as a threat. And instantaneously, the moment that it is perceived as a threat, we have the same response to the amygdala and then releasing of the hormones and to an automatic reaction. These are false alarms. And we're not aware that we are often in the midst of fight flight, a good part of our day, in a chronic state of stress with this chronic release of hormones that really is not healthy to have flowing through our bloodstream for this length of a period of time. And so there's this difference between like this acute stress, right, of a scary wolf or your child who's almost about to run into the street and fight flight kicks in and suddenly you become super mom or super dad with strength you never knew you had and speed, and you are able to rescue that child. And in an acute stress situation, what happens is we go into fight flight, same response, hormones are released, but shortly, and quite shortly after the threat is gone, we remetabolize. We go back into a state of equilibrium, of homeostasis. And these hormones are no longer rushing through our body. We may feel it for a little bit, and then suddenly the heart stops racing. We're not breathing as hard. We relax a little bit. But here we are in this state of chronic stress. This isn't what's happening. Much of our day is spent in fight flight. And physical illness and disease, emotional illness, disease, often results from this chronic state. One more diagram that I really like, and again, all of this that I'm showing you is to help us ultimately, when I circle back to talk about some of these mindful practices. And I truly believe that the more you understand the mechanism of stress, the more likely you are, because we want to be able to cognitively have some understanding instead of thinking, oh, whatever, this mindfulness stuff, to cognitively understand what is actually happening when we're stressed, and then what actually can impact that in a positive way. So here we are in high emotions on the right, with anger, fear, disgust, whatever that emotion is. And that information goes down to the amygdala and does not have time to go up into this higher part of our brain, our higher cortex or our prefrontal cortex, which is very important to note because it's this part of our brain where we are able to bring the situation into conscious awareness, where we're able to make more rational and thoughtful decisions. But in fight flight, we don't have time. If my child's running across the street, I don't have time to pause and to say, wonder what shoes I should wear, or what would be the most thoughtful way to save my child. Fight flight is there for a purpose, to prepare us to react very quickly when we need to. And we don't have the need to use this part of our brain. So you can see where that comes. However, where we're looking at low emotion. So this is now where we've entered into a state of peacefulness and calmness. And that same exact perceived threat, now that information, when it gets to the thalamus, it's now being filtered to all the different parts of my brain. It's opening up these channels of communication because fight flight has been disengaged. The sympathetic nervous system has settled down, allowing these channels of communication to open. And so suddenly, with all this awareness and seeing and knowing what's going on here, being able to make wiser decisions, this is where mindfulness then comes in. So I wanted to make sure to point that out. And so just, fight, flight, high emotions, we react versus respond. How can mindfulness help? Let's come back. Let's circle back to this for just a moment. So mindfulness is this stopping, this pausing, this creating some space, this actual space where we can bring in awareness by paying attention on purpose to whatever it is that's happening in the present moment. And to do so without attaching judgment or meaning, expectations, assumptions. And so this is an active, deliberate process. I thought, and I don't know because I don't have access here. Let's see if I can. There we go. Taking a moment just to sit with this with your breath, purposefully paying attention to what we're seeing and hearing here. So it's this giving yourself permission. We're allowed to shift. We're allowed to direct our attention away from that is making us suffer, and to develop tools to help us do that. The other way to see this definition of mindfulness is that it's about 3 words. It's about attention, it's about attitude, and it's about intention. So it's this paying attention with intention, paying attention on purpose, deliberately, with an attitude of non-judgment, entering into this moment as if it's the first time with wonder and with interest. Because truthfully, every new moment we have is the first time we are entering. And thus lies our problem. We attach what we think will happen, what we, perhaps from a memory or an early influence, which can often cloud our perspective, prevent us from being able to walk into this experience with fresh eyes and clarity. So when we look at what happens without and with mindfulness here, in a different way, I'm trying to show you a number of different ways and see if one of these perhaps, you want to hang on to it. It's offering you some meaning. So without mindfulness, there is a stressor, a stimulus, a trigger, whatever that may be. And we have no space before, as fight flight takes over, takes control, and we move directly into this state of reactivity. We start traveling down these well-worn, well-traveled grooves of familiar patterns. and we know them. If we choose to bring awareness to that, we can recognize what are our familiar ways of reacting when fight flight kicks in. With mindfulness, there's that exact same stressor. And if I choose to pause and bring in space, so you can see all the space between the stimulus and the response, and bring in this mindful moment to moment awareness. How my body feels. Maybe there's red flags of fight flight. What emotion am I feeling? What are these thoughts that are ruminating? And simply offering myself a brief moment to be with whatever it is. Not push it away, to bring in a bit of interest for a brief moment. The moment we do that is the moment we disengage fight flight and we open these channels of communication. And suddenly, with this clarity and this access to this higher part of our brain, we now have choice. This is a huge word in mindfulness. We discover that there's agency, self-efficacy, that we actually can choose to change course, shift perspectives, shift attitudes, use more kindness and compassion and acceptance, or more openness, bring in appreciation. So many different choices that we have when we simply engage in this process of mindfulness. And so there's a gentleman, a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor. And some of you may have heard of Viktor Frankl. He does a lot of writing from his unfortunate experience, an incredible gentleman, and relates this experience to mindfulness, how he somehow survived this experience and amazingly was able to choose to bring mindfulness to it. And so one of his famous quotes is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And it's in our response that lies our growth and our freedom. So how do we do this? This is kind of the fun part. So okay, Wendy, you're telling me how wonderful this could be, the potential, the possibilities here. How do we do this? So I want to emphasize again that this is a practice. Mindful practice, meditation practice is a lot like soccer practice or tennis practice or weightlifting, because each time we engage, we find that some of these pathways in our brain to attend, to bring awareness and be able to rest in the moment, they haven't even been carved out, or they're very, very weak. And so the more we engage in the practice, we're systematically strengthening and cultivating this pathway. And so bringing in this patience and gentleness and compassion towards yourself all along the journey. I've been on this journey a long time, and there are so many layers of awareness, and just providing myself with that knowledge that this patience and gentleness, and not reaching or grasping, forcing a particular experience. So I like to divide this up in a simple way, so we can maybe engage in a practice ourselves in 4 steps. Just so you have something to hold on to, grasp onto when this is over. So the first step is that any moment in time, whether it's pleasant, whether it's neutral, whether we are in the midst of strong emotions, fight, flight, and something extremely challenging, making this choice to stop and pause. And so some people actually like to visualize a stop sign when they are choosing that, and to actually stop if they're walking. The second step now is to create this space from pausing, and now to bring in awareness of bodily sensations, recognizing, oh my gosh, my hands are clenching, my jaw's clenching, my heart is racing, just noticing with interest, not with condemnation, not with judgment, just, wow, that's interesting. What's going on in my mind? I'm so angry or so worried, and I am ruminating over and over about this one particular conversation, or I'm catastrophizing, and recognizing that, bringing in that awareness. And then this is where then we can come into this making a choice of also bringing awareness to perhaps our five senses. Actually, I'm going to stop there because I think I have this on the next slide. Let's see how I have this, because on this one we're just bringing in awareness to what is happening in the body and the mind. Yes. So the third step now is where we now make this choice. We've now opened up these channels of communication. We have a bit more clarity. Maybe we've settled down our sympathetic nervous system. And now we can choose, if we'd like, to perhaps pay attention on purpose to whatever it is in the present moment that anchors us, that acts as this focus point, that helps to stabilize us to what is here and now. And so for many people, there's these three areas that many people tend to choose when they are at that third step. Often it's to the breath. We have this wonderful physiological process of breathing 4 to 8 times each minute, all day, every night. And it's an automatic. We don't need to pay attention to stay alive. But it is here for us, and we have the ability to bring conscious awareness and interest and to discover and explore the breath to help anchor us to what's here and now, to shift from wherever our ruminating thoughts were. So perhaps it's resting with the sensations of what it feels like as the chest and belly expand as the air is received with the in-breath. And then to notice this pause, and then noticing the sensations as the breath is released and everything caves inwards. Another choice is to intentionally bring awareness to your five senses. Perhaps starting with the breath and then making a choice to intentionally listen. Just like I had the waves crashing on the rocks, purposefully making a choice to shift and listen to the birds, to the wind in the trees, to the crunching of your feet, whatever that may be, to the smells, actually rolling your eyes from inside because they're rolled in and looking at your thoughts, rolling them out, blinking, taking away the film, and really seeing intentionally what's all around you. Perhaps narrowing in your focus and with interest and curiosity, investigating something small, maybe a leaf. It could be anything, the sparkles on the snow, or maybe broadening your attention and seeing the broader landscape with curiosity. We also have this ability to anchor into any one of our bodily sensations. So perhaps it is to the feeling of the soles of our feet, the sensation of contact and of touch. Some people, any part of our body, again, is available to us to attend to. We don't have to, but it is available. And so this is something that many people will choose potentially as their anchor. Now that we've anchored in, we've quieted down the chatter, because all of this rumination and thoughts is really loud, boisterous, exhausting, chaotic chatter. And so with that last step, we have allowed ourselves to let that chatter come down to a simmer, to open up and see things with clarity. And so in step 4, this is now where we now can make a choice to respond instead of reacting. All these gifts that we now have given ourselves. So another way, this is just a nice acronym if you'd like, that you can take with you, and that's using the acronym STOP. So S, actually stopping, pausing, literally in your tracks. T is to take 2 to 3 breaths. The O is to observe. So to begin to observe again, pause and observe what's going on in the body with my emotions, with my thoughts. Like, isn't that interesting? And then to observe what's right here and now in the moment. Maybe your breath, maybe one or more of your five senses. And the P would be then to proceed thoughtfully. So that's just a fun one that you can use. But there are so many other simple mindfulness practices that you can use. We can bring mindfulness into our lives in anything we do using those 4 steps or using stop. Mindful eating is an actual practice. It can be a formal practice or an informal practice of deliberately bringing awareness to starting perhaps with the breath and then bringing in all 5 senses to the experience of whatever it is that you're eating. Maybe just a couple bites at the end of the meal, or maybe an entire apple, the washing of the apple, the sound of the water, how it feels, how it looks, how it smells, the sound as you crunch into it. It's really fascinating and an interesting practice that you can try anytime. Mindful walking is lovely with intention to, again, stop, feel your feet touching the ground, perhaps feel the breath to begin to settle down this chatter. And then as you begin walking, perhaps noticing sensations of the body, the heel touching down, and bringing in this wonderful awareness of all that is around you. Because we can walk and we can miss every moment of the walk in our heads. The whole point of this is to not miss these precious moments of our lives. And even if the moments are challenging, to be able to walk through them with more ease. You can sit with a breathing meditation or with a sound meditation, just simply sitting and only paying attention to sound or the breath, or perhaps to the contact points of the body. There's something called mindful movement, which is actually yoga practice, where we're anchoring our attention on the sensations of the body in order to quiet down the chatter. Any sort of everyday activity. So I put mindfully washing hands. I love this one and I utilize it. It's like a secret little meditation that nobody knows you're doing, but we wash our hands a lot in the day. And so noticing that, oh, something, I'm ruminating, I have a strong emotion, I'm not feeling so good. And then making this choice to be with that experience, to actively engage in that process. Feel my breath, and then notice how the soap looks, the smell of the soap, the touch of my hands, all your 5 senses. It's lovely. And after a minute or 2 of washing your hands, it's like you just brought in this freshness to then move into the next part of your day. Mindful communication is very important as well. It's this moment to moment awareness of the person that you are either listening to or who you are speaking to, because we can go through an entire interaction with being in our head. We can plan dinner. We can be critical of ourselves. We can be ruminating about something that happened yesterday or is going to be happening. And we think we're multitasking, but we aren't really offering that person this authentic presence, this feeling of care, respect, and trust. So mindful communication is a very powerful part of this practice, all parts of our life. So we have a little time, and I would like to see, and I'm not even sure how many of you are here in this space with me, but I'd like to go ahead and have us engage in just a very brief sitting meditation using our breath. I'll bring in a couple of other things. If you would like to join me in this, the invitation is to just sit right where you are. No need to move unless you would like to. Just sitting comfortably, letting your arms hang to your side as if they're like heavy curtains, just letting the weight be released with gravity. Going ahead and, if you're comfortable, closing your eyes along with me. And if not, feel free to just lower your gaze. Look down softly. Taking a brief scan now of your body, maybe from the toes all the way up to the head and down the arms. Just noticing perhaps if there's any area of the body that may be holding some tension. Sometimes it's almost imperceivable, quite subtle. Doing your best to release any tension that may be present, all that is not needed here. Maybe in the shoulders, the deep muscles of the shoulders or the neck, or squeezing your fingers and then just letting them go. Remembering to soften the features of your face as well. This is where we carry a lot of our tension and our emotions. And then perhaps noticing here, as the body is releasing, this feeling of gravity, pulling the weight of the body down into your seat. So perhaps awareness of the rhythm of your breath, the breath being received. And as the breath is released, feeling as if you're letting the whole body surrender to gravity, and perhaps noticing the pressure on the hips and buttocks as it meets the surface of your chair, pulling gently downwards. With the in-breath and each out-breath, just letting go, releasing all that's not needed here. And so as we begin to anchor in to this practice, perhaps now doing your best to direct your attention to any and all sounds that may be in the space you are sitting in, or perhaps outside of your room. Maybe noticing ambient, constant humming and buzzing. Perhaps noticing the skin and how the air is actually gently touching the skin. Maybe awareness of the temperature or clothing resting on your skin. And then shifting and directing your attention now back to the gentle and warm rhythm of breathing. No need to change your breath in any way. Our body knows how to breathe. Just breathing and knowing you're breathing. Touching in softly. Noticing as the air enters the body, this expansion, as the air fills the chest, the belly. And then noticing as the air is released from the body and feeling the sensations as the chest, belly gape inwards. Perhaps noticing the coolness of the air as it touches in on the nostrils with the in-breath or touches down the nasal passage. So perhaps resting your attention on a part of the breath that may be most distinct for you. That may be the region of the chest. There's pressure and expansion here and release. Maybe further down in the region of the lower abdomen, the belly. Resting here as the belly expands and grows, rises with the in-breath. And then noticing as the breath is released, how the belly is drawn back towards the spine, caving in. Maybe noticing this outward movement of the ribs as they glide gently outwards to make more room for the breath. And then noticing the movement of the ribs gently gliding in as the breath is released. So perhaps following the entire cycle of the breath, noticing the moment the in-breath begins, following the sensations of expansion with interest and curiosity, all the way to the top. Noticing the slight pause. And then the moment the out breath begins, exploring the sensations all the way to the bottom as everything caves in. And then this pause here. So as you feel ready, if you would like to, on the next in-breath, going ahead and taking in a deeper, more complete in-breath, filling not only the full capacity of the lungs, but letting the breath spill out and touch in on all the regions of the body as if you're a balloon blowing up. And then feeling the breath gradually and slowly being released from the whole body, the sensations all the way to the bottom, and then perhaps pausing here for a moment or two. So at the sound of the singing bowl, as you feel ready, going ahead and coming back to this space. Maybe taking a moment as you open your eyes first to bring in your visual field and bring awareness to what you're seeing. Knowing that you can maintain this gentle, soft awareness of the touch of the breath. And perhaps just bringing awareness, noticing for a moment the quality of breathing, but also the activity of the mind or the felt sense of your heart in this moment. Nothing to achieve, no goal to reach, no expectation, just noticing whatever is what is here right now. And so accepting that moment with interest, just noticing perhaps what you may or may not have discovered. So thank you for joining me in that. Some of you may already be meditators, I don't know, and may have just enjoyed the few moments of dropping in. And others, this may have been your first experience. So what I wanted to just talk to you about real quickly before I break out for questions is that there are mindfulness-based stress reduction classes here. Now they are on Zoom. So I say they are up here in Northern Michigan, but really people join from all over the United States now. Wonderful silver lining of offering these classes. And these classes are as described. They are 8-week classes on Saturdays. There is a full day silent retreat, which is for my class currently is this coming Saturday. I'm excited to take this group through that. That's between week 6 and 7. There's an orientation at the beginning that's mandatory. And so should this be something that perhaps you are wanting to perhaps explore on a more intense level, this self-discovery, this journey of what could be possible with mindfulness, this is one possibility. There are many others out there as well. And just because I'm trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction, that doesn't mean that this is the end-all, be-all, only program. There are many programs. This one just happens to be one that is highly evidence-based and is quite structured in a way that I was drawn to it. And so what I wanted to mention is that this next session that I have actually is coming up. I have the wrong dates on this one. I'm so sorry. I'm just looking at it right now. And so I will make sure to get the correct dates if you're interested to the library. I had a technical issue this morning, and when I rebooted, it looks like it put up the session that's going on right now. But our next session, actually, orientation starts March 20th, runs through May 22nd. And the Northern Physicians Organization has partnered with my office, Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services, so that our mission is that nobody should be denied entering into an experience like this. So there are full and partial financial scholarships without question. And that's right on the registration form online. So there shouldn't be a financial reason if anybody happens to be interested in this particular class. The way to go there is on mindfulnesstc.com to learn more and to, if you're interested, perhaps to register. And I also, I mentioned, and Betsy mentioned that I have a special training in mindfulness-based stress reduction for teens. And I've been teaching this wonderful class for many years. So rewarding. And again, this is showing the current class, so I apologize, but that class actually starts March 31st. It's an 8-week class. And again, there are these full and partial financial scholarships for this group. Really powerful ways of integrating this in a more intense level. So I just want to leave us with a couple, and then we can answer questions. Just cute. There's so many cute mindfulness cartoons, but I kind of liked this one. This is how we all feel. This is our reactivity, right? And then this is a quote. It's a little blurry, I see, but from the Dalai Lama. So I'd like to end with this, that, and I believe this as well, if every 8-year-old in the world is taught meditation, we will eliminate violence from the world within 1 generation. Kind of a powerful statement from the Dalai Lama. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now and see if there are any people here that may have questions that you'd like to ask. We have about 15 minutes left.
Thank you so much for all that.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions yet, but let's give them a minute and maybe someone will write it in their chat or the Q&A portion. I personally have a really big problem with stillness. I can't sit still. This was really nice because I'm actually supposed to be doing this. So I could focus on it because I'm actually multitasking. I'm doing my job and being able to participate. So that's nice. But for myself personally, I would have a really hard trouble. I think of too much stuff that I have to do. And that's just something, I think a lot of people are like that. I think a lot of people have to figure out what's important to them and how they need to deal with things. I think I really like that we're recording this, and just so everyone else knows, so you can go back and look at your steps. I can totally get into the washing hands. I think I'm good with that. Have that practice down. I love to wash my hands. So,
and you know, Betsy's so there is formal mindfulness practice, formal meditations, but these informal practices of, I like to call it dropping into a mindful moment. So there are these very brief moments of pause in our day that don't take away from what we need to accomplish. What they actually do is offer us more clarity so that we can move forward potentially with more wisdom and more efficiency without our emotions clouding our journey forward. And so these mindful moments of just pausing and stopping and bringing awareness, and then making this thoughtful decision of perhaps I'll stand here with the sensation of my feet, or perhaps I will just breathe before I move forward. So there's a lot of very simple dropping into moments that don't necessarily take away from all that we are doing in our lives.
Right. So someone asked if you can include your email again. It was up briefly in the beginning of the presentation.
Yes. And I'm wondering, so my email, wondering if it's possible, Betsy, how I can get my email as well as the updated flyers. Is that possible to get onto?
Yeah, if you email them to me, there will be a follow-up email that goes out to everyone, and I can send that with it.
That would be great. But if you're writing this down, I mean, my email is wendyweckstein@gmail.com, WECKSTEIN@gmail.com. And this website that has a lot of information. The other thing I didn't show you, if we have a moment, I could go there. I have that up for you if you'd like. But there are also free meditations. I have 2-minute meditations. I have 20-second pause meditations. I have 45-minute meditations. There's about a good dozen free meditations that you're welcome. They're free to the public. I use them for my class, but they're also free to the public. And I also have free teen meditations as well on the website. And the website's just a good place to explore what's there for you to use or learn more about this, or if you want to go ahead and register for a class and look into the financial scholarships, that's possible too.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we'll get emails out to everyone. And I see Marley understands what I mean about not being able to sit still and have too many things going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions? So I see, oh, thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate your comments. She's giving gratitude to you and to the library. Let's see.
Thank you.
And Kimberly says, thank you. She feels more relaxed already and will definitely try this more often.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you doing this. And love, my dog is barking in the background. I apologize.
No worries. That's perfectly fine. I understand. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, great. And I'll get the emails out to everyone. And then look up on our YouTube channel is where this program will be posted in the next day or two.
Wonderful. All right, I will. I'll go ahead then and just forward you that information today. I'll try to do it right away for you. Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.